New business ID 2024310, consideration of a special exemption for the Forest Apartments. And we have a presentation. At this time, we'll have the presentation.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, members of the board. My name is Matthew Scott. I am a zoning attorney at the law firm of Greenspoon and Martyr. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, Res SC Land LLC. As stated, we're here for the Forest Apartments project. It has an address of 787 South State Road 7, and there are 3 applications: special exception, subdivision resurvey, and plat note amendment. And so, as I always like to do, I start with the project location. The property is located on the west side of State Road 7. It's a few blocks south of Atlantic Boulevard, but directly south of Southwest 7th Street. You can see from the aerial that to the far west is the Herman and Dorothy Schuster Preserve. And then on the north side of the project is an existing office complex that's been there for quite some time. Here's just a zoomed in aerial for better context. So what we're talking about tonight, what we're seeking approval of to proceed with construction of sometime soon, is on the south and west sides. It's approximately 7 acres. And as you may know, it has sat vacant for easily 20 years, maybe 30 years. It's been vacant for a very long time, which is surprising because the city has a vision for this area up and down 441 of there being mixed use, lots of redevelopment. And so we were excited that my client was able to get this property under contract to pursue development of it. And so, as I said, we have 3 requests tonight, 3 applications. The first is special exception approval to develop the property with a 338-unit multifamily development. Subdivision resurvey approval to change the subdivision lines on the property. And so this is sort of just modifying the property lines. And then finally, a plat note amendment approval to amend the restrictive note on the existing plat. And so for a little background on that, the county governs platting, and the way that Broward County does it, which is unique to all of anywhere I practice, is that they have restrictive notes. So not only does the county govern access and drainage features and property lines, but they also require applicants to indicate how much development they're going to do. And so what you'll hear later on is that there's a plat note. The language says it can be up to 146,000 square feet of office. We're seeking to amend that to allow for 146,000 square feet of office and the 338 multifamily units. And so if the plat note amendment ultimately is approved by the city commission, it would then go to the county commission for approval as well. And so candidly, that's sort of a ministerial process that accompanies the special exception. The meat of the application tonight, candidly, is the special exception application. And so here's a color site plan to provide the context of what we're proposing. On the top of your screen, what you see there is the existing office buildings. And on the bottom part, the southern part, would be the proposed multifamily community. On the back side, the west side that abuts the existing preserve, would be parking. The idea is that this parking would serve the existing office and the residential development. The access locations that exist on Atlantic Boulevard would not be changed, but the main spine road that runs east-west, so left to right on the screen, would be realigned a little bit so that it better serves both of the communities. The residential development will have a gated access to it, and what you see is 5 buildings. There'll be a front building that'll be fronting on Atlantic Boulevard. On the north side of it, sort of at the entrance feature, will be a large open space, sort of like a green or a plaza, people to sit, and just a really inviting entrance to the community. I would also note that on the northeastern part, we are providing a new bus shelter that will accommodate the residents, but also the larger community with a new bus stop. As you can see there is an amenity building sort of in the middle that will have a pool. And then the buildings in the back, really interesting feature that our architect prepared is a courtyard in the middle, sort of like a lawn for the residents to enjoy, the people that are living there, their kids, an area to play outside that is in between the buildings. And I'll show some more images of that as we proceed. But here are the renderings. So the first rendering is looking at the new community from from 441 looking west. So as you can see at the bottom right of the screen, that's sort of the covered plaza area that is an open space feature that's required by your code. And then this would be the primary frontage. So this would be the main thing that the city at large sees when driving by. I want to talk about this for a moment because we spent a lot of time with your staff working on this. And I think ultimately it yielded a superior product to what we originally started with. And what we heard from your staff was that they wanted larger balconies. They wanted more facade articulation. They wanted us to provide more exciting colors. And so we landed with this final design that went through, I don't know, I want to say 10 different iterations to get what I think is a really beautiful project that will be a gateway feature to the city. So while I have this up, I want to talk about the zoning and the land use. The land use is activity center and the zoning is gateway. The city's vision for this goes back, I don't know, 15 or 20 years. The idea was to create what's called an activity center, which is a county concept that cities can create that gives them the right to authorize mixed use development, lots of commercial uses, lots of multifamily uses, and the idea is to spur redevelopment, spur more of a pedestrian-friendly environment, as opposed to sort of the traditional zoning of having homes in one area and commercial in another. Now, unfortunately, Margate hasn't seen so much activity on the development front in their activity center. But I wanted to share that background on this land use because the vision for this area is this type of project. Your code, your land use plan amendment contemplated developers coming and redeveloping sites or developing sites with this type of project. Similarly, the gateway zoning. Gateway is a self-descriptive term that describes entrance features to cities. And so this, as you know, is on the south side of the city. And so it was a point of emphasis to staff that was favorably received by our team that this had to be something special as people drove into the city. And that's, I think, why we spent so much time on the architecture for this, is because we wanted the city to be proud and we wanted the future residents to be proud that this is a special new community as they drive into the city. Here's another rendering. This is of the building directly to the west of it. This shows the pool area. The vision for this community is there would be a luxury rental community that would have various amenities such as the pool area, a gym, lots of bike parking, games and things in the courtyard area that I'll show in a second, so that the residents are attracted to Margate and view this as a great place to live. This is that sort of courtyard feature I talked about. This is the back buildings. And so the design for this is that this would be in between the two buildings and be a really unique feature for residents that have the balconies on either side of it, that they can overlook this heavily landscaped area that has people playing outside and a green area to hang out, have picnics, things of that nature. And so getting the special exception criteria. Your code sets forth a handful of criteria that we have to address in our applications. And the idea of this is that city wants to put applicants through a test of sorts to say, can you comply with this criteria to show that the project will meet the code and will provide positive benefits to the city? And so, as I said at the beginning, your staff have found that our application meets the criteria, thus they're recommending approval. And that's why I have the green checks next to all of them. We are not here tonight asking for any variances. We're not here tonight asking for any waivers. We are not arguing with your staff about anything. We have spent the time on the front end working through all of the issues so that we have their recommendation of approval. And so running through a few of the key ones from my perspective. First one is that it's consistent with the purposes, goals, objectives, and policies of the Margate Comprehensive Plan and the Code of Ordinances. I touched on this already. This project is literally the city's vision for this area, for these corridors, is multifamily development and creating new projects in the city to attract other commercial development in other areas. And the way to do that is to provide more rooftops. By there being new housing options, the commercial uses will follow. And so this fits with your comprehensive plan and the Margate Code of Ordinances. Another criteria is that the establishment or maintenance or operation of this project will not be detrimental to or endanger the public health, safety, or general welfare. So a lot of times the focus of this criteria is on traffic. And I want to talk about traffic briefly. So it's always a concern. It's always a concern with any new development, and Margate has its fair share of traffic. The gateway zoning where the project is located, it allows a laundry list of commercial uses. Those uses are permitted as a right. What that means is there's no special exception required. We could submit a site plan, and if we meet code, it has to be approved. Those commercial uses are major trip generators. They create a ton of traffic. Think of a grocery store or bars or department stores. And so those uses are permitted. And so when we looked at the traffic for this project, what we established was that it'll generate approximately 130 to 150 new trips, new vehicles in the AM hours and the PM hours. And so when we talk to our traffic engineer, he's here if you have questions for him. What that effectively means is 1 to 2 cars per minute. And so your city, your engineering department, the D's department, reviewed our traffic study and found that it will not have a detrimental impact on traffic. Not only did your engineering department do that, but the city, for the first time, to my knowledge, engaged an outside traffic engineer of their own to review our traffic study. And the outside engineer, who's an expert in this matter, also approved our traffic study and found that the proposed levels of traffic are within the levels of service for the roadways. And so that was a big feature here because traffic is always a key concern. And so jumping down to the next criteria that I think are important ones to highlight. And so you go to the bottom there, the utilities, roadway capacity, drainage, and other necessary public facilities, including police, fire, emergency services, exist at adopted level of service, or will be available concurrent with demand. And so what this asks is, are there facilities in place that can accommodate the use? And so what we found were, for a variety of the utilities, there were no issues. But what was discovered is that there is a lift station. So the sewer component of the project needed to be upgraded. And so as one of the conditions of this project, my client is paying to upgrade the lift station to improve the sewer capacity. And so I think that clearly is what led your engineering staff to say, okay, this meets code, it complies with this criteria. The next one would be that adequate measures exist or shall be taken to provide ingress and egress to the proposed use for vehicles and pedestrians. And so we thought it was important to maintain the existing access points. So that's why we're not changing the existing access on 441. But what we are doing is enhancing the pedestrian realm. So we're providing larger sidewalks than exist there. As I said earlier, we're providing a new bus stop at my client's expense to encourage mass transit usage. And then there is, and if you'd like, I can go back to the site plan showing this. There is a sidewalk program throughout our site plan that allows pedestrians to walk in and out of the project and then through to the back to enjoy the preserve, which candidly, from our perspective, is a very underutilized feature in the city. And so the sidewalk features that we're providing hopefully will enhance that feature of the city. Next one would be that there's adequate parking areas and off-street truck loading spaces. This is a big one in the city. I think we hear about this a lot. There's a lot of concern with parking. And so quite candidly, the city of Margate has the highest parking requirement of any city in Broward County. I think it's because there's a real sensitivity to some of the existing older communities being underparked and there being issues with people parking in the streets. And so there is a requirement that there be 700 or so parking spaces. So there's 338 residential units, meaning more than double in parking spaces. And what we're providing are 716 parking spaces. So we meet code on that to ensure that we won't create any sort of parking issue for any of the neighboring areas. The last one that I wanted to touch on is that the design of the proposed use shall minimize adverse effects, including visual impacts of the proposed use on an adjacent property. And this talks about setbacks and buffers and things of that nature. So a unique feature of this project, as I said, it's been sitting there vacant forever, is that there are zero visual impacts to this project to any surrounding communities. To the south is a shuttered used car dealership. It's no longer in business, and that's in North Lauderdale. To the north is an existing office development that is currently vacant. And then to the west is a preserve. And so the buildings that we're proposing are all 5 stories. They meet code. And so there's no visual impact whatsoever. This isn't the kind of situation where there are massive, incredibly tall apartments looking down into people's backyards or things of that nature. And so in the interest of time, oh, let me go back. I apologize. I forgot about these slides. So here are just some more renderings giving an idea of certain features of the project. So the top left you see would be the entrance feature in that plaza area. And the other are some of the pedestrian spaces that, as I said, we worked hard on to heavily landscape with brand new landscaping, brick pavers, and other desirable pedestrian features that, again, have that elevating gateway experience for the city. I think in the interest of time, I'll cover the other items. The subdivision resurvey, as I said, is a boundary line drawing issue. The idea is to make sure that the lot lines work, that the configuration of the roadways meet code, that there are easements for drainage and things of that nature. And so this one is ministerial in nature. What I mean by that is the exercise here is whether we check the boxes in your code or not. And so the subdivision resurvey is simple. It meets code in all material specs. There are no issues that arose during that part of the process. This is just a companion item with a special exception in the site plan to redraw some of the boundary lines and reconfigure that access road that sort of runs through the community. And then the Platinum Amendment I spoke about a little bit as well. This is a county process that they impose on the cities. Most places, I can think of Palm Beach County, Miami-Dade County, they don't have this sort of county overlord component. Broward does. So Broward says you have to pick a level of intensity for uses. And so the current maximum intensity is 146,000 square feet of office. We're proposing to change that to 146,000 square feet of office and 338 mid-rise dwelling units. Again, staff is supporting this. This is sort of just travels with the special exception and all the things that the city would need to look at as far as water capacity, sewer capacity, traffic, things of that nature. They get reviewed with the special exception. And so this is something that just has to be done because of the county requirements. I'd be happy to take any questions you may have, or I can come back after staff does their presentation. But thank you for allowing me to make this presentation. My client's been at this for 2 years. We've been at this for 5, 6 rounds of staff review. And so we're really excited to be here, hopefully moving forward with this project from here with a recommendation of approval to the City Commission, and then hopefully to construction.
I had a quick question for you, man. This is where that telecommunication store was, a Ding-a-ling? Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yes. I have.
That's in the northern office, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Are we going to have some kind of presentation from the traffic person?
Yes.
Besides that, or do we have to ask the questions now?
So I'd be happy to have our traffic engineer speak. He worked on the study for months. And so if you'd like that now, that's perfectly fine, or you can ask any questions of him.
Okay.
It's at the board's discretion.
Tony, go ahead.
Yes, the preserve that you intend to make a parking lot, who owns that?
Yeah, let me clarify. We're not changing the preserve. We couldn't change the preserve. The preserve by definition is preserved. And so the back, I'll go to the slide and show it to you. So this is a better aerial. The left-hand side of the screen is the permanent Dorothy Schuster Preserve. The parcel 2 you see is not a preserve. That is property owned by the Schuster family that is under contract to my client. It's in no way preserved whatsoever. We wouldn't even be here if it were.
Okay. All right, thank you.
This may be beyond the scope of what we're visiting here, but are you all going to reserve any of the apartments under affordable housing since you said it's a luxury complex?
No, the plan is not to deed restrict any of the units for affordable housing.
So if I might help the board, so I understand Ms. Sanchez may have some questions about traffic, so I don't know if you want to have his traffic engineer come up now, or you want to hear from city staff and maybe see what they have to say.
Yeah, okay.
Okay,
Yeah, let's wait for the city staff.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. Christopher Gratz. How's this? Is it a little bit better? All right. I'm Christopher Gratz, one of the senior planners here for your city. I've been working here about 2 years. I've been a planner for 27. And this is a presentation on the forest apartments. I'll start off by saying I have nothing to say to contradict what Mr. Scott has just said. I don't want to repeat too much of it. I put together a simplified presentation for you. And I gotta apologize, it's like, what was it, it's like 1,000 pages of material that I gave you, at least. So these things are very complex for something very simple. So my goal was just to try to break it down and give you some of the essential information, and all the very nitty-gritty details are in the staff report. So if there's anything we need to get into, we have that, but I just want to kind of give you like sort of a big picture overview and sort of explain it as simple as I can. It's not working as usual. There it goes. All right. So the first slide here. So just an overview, 338 apartment units. There's 5 applications required to do this, and 3 require commission approval. The parking, so there was one for the parking lots. That's a staff approval. The existing office park is already approved. There's no approval for that. And then there was a residential site plan that we reviewed. And that one's subject to the special exception. And related to the site plan for the apartments is what Mr. Scott talked about, was the plat note amendment. And that is really just about Broward County with their land use control and getting money out of the applicant to build more, to improve our county. And then the subdivision resurvey is just redrawing the parcel lines. So let's see. Slide will advance. This never works for me. Paul, can you advance it? All right, so this big high level future land use. This is within the activity center. And then the parking lots are in a land use called Office Park. And then just to the west of that is conservation, the Dorothy and Herman Schuster Preserve. Next slide, please. This is the zoning. This is in the gateway zone. And then the parking lots are in B2. And then we have conservation behind that. And then to the north is gateway. So next slide is fine. So this was all of the applications they had to submit, just the specific ones. I just listed them out. But the preamble to that was back in July 2023. A couple of you on the board then, not all of you, we had to do a code change in order to allow this. So the way the code had been written, it did not allow residential to front State Road 7 directly. And it was kind of, how do you do mixed use and promote a transit-oriented corridor if you don't allow residential on it? It was, so we went through that, and some of the questions you have issues with tonight too, we talked about was like the traffic then, and I'll touch on that a little bit. But that was all. So the commission, we laid the groundwork for someone to be able to submit a project like this. So next slide. So the overview, we went to the development community conditional approval. The special exception is we're ready for approval. The only reason it can't be approved is the special exception approval for the residential site plan. Everything else about the site plan complies except having the special exception. And then everything that you heard the word conditional approval, and sometimes that gives people an uneasy feeling. It's all paperwork. It's all just crossing some T's, dotting some I's, and getting things recorded legally and correctly so that they're tied up. So it was like a title issue, an easement agreement, a parking agreement, drainage agreement, and the subdivision resurvey. Literally all just some boring paperwork that seals up some details. Next slide. All right, so this was the site plan. So you see the whole site. The stuff that's shaded is not what we're talking about. The stuff that's white is the site plan, and that's the apartments. The shaded to the north is the existing office, and to the west is the new parking lots. Next slide. So this is how the whole apartment complex functions. So you can see the unshaded part is the apartment complex, and then the parking for it. Half the parking will be dedicated and owned by the apartments. The other half to the north will be owned by the office, and it'll be joint use on that. Through that parking lot, the people that live in the apartments will be able to walk to and use that preserve. Again, this is just to reiterate, so that's a public park, but this is a private property. The public access to the park is on the west side of the park. This is that access easement, unless the office park would allow people to park there, you would be trespassing. So it is basically your access is from the other side of the street. So, but the residents will be able to go in there. And whoever lives in this apartment complex and whoever's their visitor can come see them and go use it and go through that gate that exists up there now. Next slide. This is just some of the details of what was there for you to see, the apartment count, the size of the units count, and the square footage and all that. And I heard you touched on and bringing up the issue of affordable housing. Look, Broward County has been declared through some studies is the most unaffordable place to live in the entire United States. We have the highest cost burden on renters in the United States. You need to make $110,000, $112,000 a year to rent an apartment to not be cost burden. We're short currently 47,000 dwelling units in this county based on demand. We need another 280,000 units by 2050. So one of the things you do is you just build more. The more supply, the better. I know it sounds, I'm sorry it's not affordable. We can't make these folks do the affordable. But the affordability issue, what ties into that is just the supply, and that's part of the reason why things are so affordable, because we have such a small supply based on the demand that we have. So, that's just the answer for that. And I wish it was different. I wish it was cheaper here, but this is just how things have happened in Broward, and that's where we are. And next slide, please, Paul. So this is just showing you a layout on how this looks on the road. So like one of the things was really important doing the code amendment and discussion with the commission is the placement of the building and the look of it from the street. So it doesn't feel like it's something that's, a cavern on State Road 7. So you can see there, it's going to be 71.5 feet from the curb of State Road 7. That road's never going to be widened. That's the biggest the road's ever going to be. That's where the pavement's going to be. That giant grass area is the drainage area. This is not going to change. This is the corridor is what it is. That road, there's no more improvements to this road you can do other than build a train above it, or take away a lane and put a train on it, or take away a lane and put a bus lane on it. This is the biggest that road's going to be. So right now in front, there's a 44-foot swale that uses the drainage. One of the things we had them put in with the code is a 10-foot multi-use path. At the property line, half of it is on the property, half put it in an easement. So we had them do that because if you're familiar with the property and go by there, there's some really big oak trees right out in front. So we had them put the half of the multi-use path on their property within an easement, not hurting their setbacks, so that they didn't have to cut the trees down to put the sidewalk in. It would be kind of stupid to want to have this nice development with the multi-use path and sidewalk where there's some great shade trees there already, and we would have to tell them to cut them down. So that's the reason for that. And then they have 13-foot for between the landscape and the fence, so there's plenty of room for more landscaping there. And then officially it's 18 feet from the property line, but as you can see, the reality is it matters how far it is from the road, and it's set back pretty far. So you can see this is the building, this is the architectural view of what is going to be on State Road 7. And as Mr. Scott said, we worked really hard back and forth with this with the architect. You go to the next slide to see the next picture. And looking at this, you see there's like an open space feature there, a nice place to sit for the residents. That's a code requirement. We had them redesign and relocate that there, and we think it's a better project. This picture isn't showing the oak trees that are out there in State Road 7 because it would hide the building. So they wanted, show the product, but I can tell you, and you guys who lived here longer than I have worked here, this looks to me like this will be the nicest building and project in the entire city for residential use. I can't think of one that looks better than this. I can't. Toscana looks pretty good, but I think this is better. I don't know another apartment complex that looks this good. So, next slide. And this is some of the things on the inside with the landscape features that they're doing in the public walkways and the sitting areas and whatnot. Next slide. So this is like the main building with the amenity and the pool and a clubhouse, which again, I don't know another development that has one that looks this nice. Next slide. Okay, so staff findings. It's in your backup. It's like 10 pages of lots of stuff to read, but basically all the criteria were met. Mr. Scott went over some of them in detail, and they all met the criteria. The only one that I couldn't say meets the criteria is because the 10th one is the commission finds that granting the application is best interest of the city. That's for the commission to decide. That's also for you all to make a judgment. You live here, you see what's in front of you, and and that's a judgment call that you make. That's not a judgment call for me to make. And then just to carry along, so I'm going through there's 3 applications. The other 2, there's no point in even listening to them at the commission level if they get denied. They're all, the subdivision survey and the plat note amendment, they're irrelevant unless the special exception's approved. That's what's driving the train. That has to be approved, and then the other 2 can be approved. And the other 2 are really basically just more technical paperwork. And just, I'll touch on traffic a little bit before you're going to have Carl come up here and beat up on him. So we all know traffic's horrible here in Broward, and I've said this when we did the apartment amendment, and it's going to keep getting bad. And there's really, the only true solution is to keep densifying Broward to the point where mass transit will work, where we can put enough buses on the road that you don't have to look at a schedule for them to show up. That's how planning works. That's how cities grow. So in the interim, yes, there's traffic everywhere, and it's a mess, and it's been a mess, and it's going to continue to be one. That's where we live. That's the nature of it. And in order for transit and things like that to actually work, you need more people. Like downtown Fort Lauderdale, they were starting to have a transit system, they were starting to have like a fixed rail system, but they canceled it. You need to have a density of people for that to work, and then things get going. But, I'm not going to lie to you and say that things will ever move faster. There's no way to get things to move faster in this county. We can just keep moving them along and try not to get tied up as bad, but that's just how it is. We are growing. We are going to continue to grow, and people are going to keep wanting to live here, and people have the right to build here, right to invest here, and that's just the reality. It's hard to accept, but that's the fact of living here in Broward County. We have a large we have almost 2 million people, more population than 10 states. Yes, the traffic, it's not going to magically get better. We just have to manage it and move things along as best we can, to the point where we actually make the serious investment in the transit system. The county is taking very big steps towards that, and they continue to take steps towards that, but that is just the nature of where we live. So the staff recommendation, we recommend everything is approved, but based on the conditions of the Development Review Committee. And when you make your deliberation, and should you decide to want to make a recommendation of approval, that would be your recommendation. You'd be recommending approval based on the staff's recommendation. So that covers having it handle the DRC conditions. Next slide. And so I just basically talked about that. Next slide. And then I touched on the subdivision survey, basically just redrawing lines on who owns the property. Next one. So this just shows it's going to be these 4 parcels. Parcels 2 and 3 will be owned by the apartments, and then 4 and 1 will be owned by the office park. Next slide. And again, they met all the criteria. We recommend approval. Again, it's just paperwork, dotting the I's, crossing the T's. Next one. That's the last slide. And then the plat note amendment, I talked about that. Is just literally Broward County has kept land use control over us. And whenever you put something more on a piece of property with a plat, they charge the applicant money to do things to improve our county, so. So that's all I have. If you have any questions for me, I'll be glad to entertain them.
I do. I just want to clarify, the plan is for the 338 apartments, and then right over that in the pictures that we saw is offices.
The offices are already there.
The offices are there.
Yeah, the offices are, that's the existing office park, yeah.
Are you- are-
That's vacant right now. But
Are
that's
they,
that-
oh, so but they will be open and,
It's up for, I see for sale signs up on the property, so it's just a vacant office building right now.
okay, and another,
That's not part of this at all. It's all their existing. It's just they're gonna share just the access drive into it is shared by them. That's.
and the parking.
That's all. And then half of that new parking lot in the back.
Okay.
And you're gonna be able to drive through that to get out to Southwest Seventh instead of having to go
Mhm.
out to 441 and do a U-turn that you can't make when there's so much traffic. So you'll be able to actually, when you live there, you'll be able to go out to Seventh and go out to the light and make a left and go north on 441.
Okay, and the other question is, this is just, that I want to know. Who confirms that the levels of service for drainage, potable water, all of that is done? Is that the city or?
It's a joint effort between the city and the county. The drainage goes through a drainage license and permitting through the county. They have a drainage agreement with this. One of the things that's very interesting with this whole project is the preserve does not have enough water in it. It is not as environmentally vibrant as it should be, and the county actually wants this property to drain into it. And there is an agreement that's part of this that will be finalized and recorded that secures that the drainage from this apartments goes in and makes that, it's supposed to be more of a wetland and it's kind of dry right now. So they actually want that to happen. So, and then they do, like the engineering department, they do a study on the water to see if there's enough water and the water pressures and all that. So that's one of the concurrency things. And the other concurrency thing was the sewer, which Scott brought up that they found out that one of the lift stations needed to be upgraded because of the building these apartments. So they're going to be spending quite a sum of money to upgrade that. The parks concurrency is already covered under this local activity land use. So adding these units to this property, these are already accounted for in our Parks and Rec requirement of open space of 1 acre per 3 acres per 1,000 residents is like the county standard. So that's all accounted for with that. And again, traffic, it is what it is here in the county. The more, at this point, the more cars you put on the road, it's a fee that goes to the county to improve the overall transportation network and the mass transit network. That's how it works. We are in a traffic concurrency exception area. What it used to mean was you would have to build this turn lane, build this light, all the turn lanes, all the lights, all the traffic cameras that you could possibly think of are already up. So now it's just a fee that goes to the county. So that's determined to be, that's met too. And that's met how the county says it's met.
Okay, and the water that is going to be drained into the preserve, what type of water is that?
It's just, the rain. Just,
Oh, rain.
just the rainwater,
Okay.
the rainwater that falls on the property will be filtered, be pre-treated before it goes into the preserve on this property and through an exfiltration trench system and then go into the preserve.
Okay. Oh, any businesses are going to be in the bottom of the apartments?
No, there's no planned businesses, but like with every residential use in the city, that people will be allowed to have home businesses. So you can have a home occupational license and have it, your office at your house and things like that. It's just, that's just.
But no stores
No,
in the
no,
bottom
no
of the,
stores, no stores.
okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions?
Yeah, I have several.
If you could, for the purpose of the minutes, sorry to interrupt, if you could just state your name before you speak, that way the secretary will know who's speaking when the minutes are being
Okay.
taken.
Eugene Eckley. I have several questions, maybe outside some of the parameters of the meeting tonight. But since I'm a newcomer to this process, and just to clarify, I think for some of the audience, at what stage they can intervene productively, because I think it's far too late, but perhaps for what some of you have in mind. And can we learn in the future to do better together? Affordable housing, our president brought up this issue. Is there, and I read the code for the city and the goals and objectives. If I remember correctly, one of the objectives was to increase affordable housing. And you yourself said this housing in general is a major problem in the county and growing over a period of time. Running towards luxury housing, to me, makes the averages that you talked about, the unaffordability in general in the county, makes that problem worse. It seems like it does absolutely nothing for affordable housing and in fact reduces what might have been an opportunity. Is there anything in the planning process in the future
And
so
Mr.
that we
Eckley,
don't lose further opportunities?
Mr. Eckley, David Tolles, Board Attorney. So we're focused on this application. There's nothing currently with respect to this application which would allow for the imposition of any affordable housing requirement by the city. That's something if you'd like to talk about separately outside of this application, but based upon this application that's before you tonight, there's
I
nothing.
realize I'm raising issues that may be outside of our.
I know that's why
agenda.
we need to focus on this application and the testimony and evidence presented related to this application. Other conversations we can have outside of this application.
Okay, other things which possibly are more relevant, the amount of green area or park area in the city. If I look at your map here, it looks like this entire area that's being developed, residential parking, and shared access and parking currently, and for what the lawyer said for 20 to 30 years, has been a green area adjacent to a conservation, a preserve. And this green area is going to get the axe for parking lots. And the only access is for people who can afford the luxury housing to sort of go through the back door into the existing preserve. Was there any consideration in the development of this project, possibly very much at the beginning, of keeping the green space somehow?
They are, so there is an overall green space, open space requirement and park space requirement for the city and for the local activity center. And those are all met. So so there was consideration given. There is that, but not for, so there's a standard that's required for publicly dedicated parkland, and that is met in the city and is already met. Those units that these properties getting have already been accounted for in our park space. There is no legal way or rational nexus that we could draw to say that they needed to dedicate more land for a park. This is land that's been owned by these folks that have been platted and we're just at the final entitlement, but has always been meant to be developed since they've owned it. So
For the 20 or 30 years prior to this upcoming development, was this land privately owned?
yes, this has always
Okay.
been in private hands. Yes.
Okay. And the last question, and again, I think it may be relevant, is there any change to the breadth of services for the activity center, but because of this development?
I'm not quite sure what you're asking.
Is the activity center going to suffer somehow?
No. This is what the activity center was intended to do. So the land use and the zoning, it was all written, intended to do this. It's actually going to make it work better by having more residential within the activity center. That was the goal. So the activity center is this area around the city that had these entitlement to more dwelling units that are just sitting in a pool waiting to be built to enhance the activity center. So it's not to detract. It's actually fulfilling the goals and objectives of having the activity center.
Okay, and the last question, you made reference to the need for further urbanization so we can reach some type of threshold for mass transit. And that seems to be your philosophy, to encourage or accelerate such urbanization in the future. Is that built in, your philosophy is accepted broadly by the city and its citizens who may or may not want further or accelerated urbanization and could care less about mass transit?
That is that is the policies, the county and the city is in line with them. We cannot stop the human population from growing and stop them from wanting to live here and to accommodate them. And that's just the reality where we live. People want to be here. They love it. We can't just say the door's shut, you can't come in. It just doesn't work like that. Legally, you cannot do that. So the only solution is to further urbanize and to keep the livability up.
And again, it's outside the agenda for this evening and the specific focus on this project. But at some point, I'd like to be apprised of what citizens can do earlier in this process to intervene productively.
Okay.
Because it seems like a lot of people here tonight are basically wasting their time.
No, if I might misdirectly, it's never, if I might, ladies and gentlemen, please. So the public is always invited to be part of the process. Ms. Tashiro, head of planning department, is here. She can answer what's done prior to this evening, but certainly all the required notices are provided to the public. They have an opportunity this evening to provide public comment to the board this evening. This board will provide a recommendation to the city commission. Prior to the city commission making any decision, the public will have an opportunity to speak to their city commission directly. So the public is very involved in this process tonight and moving forward and prior to this meeting as well. I don't know if Ms. Tashiro has anything else she'd like to add.
Well, I would agree with you, sir.
But Ms. Tashiro is,
Liz Tashiro, Development Services Director. Just wanted to inform you of a couple of items. So the processes that the developments go through, we have criteria, very strict criteria. We have to meet codes. They have to go through a lot of this process. And that is what the end is, that we bring you these applications, and they will tell you that I've been told our city is one of the strictest that they have to deal with staff going through the processes. But what I wanted to tell you about the transportation, I just don't want people to get too excited. The cities have to work with the counties, with the state. It's very involved processes on looking at intersections, looking at the traffic on all of the roads. The city's involved with, we have to participate with the county. It's not something that we demand and say, transportation will go through the city. Mass transportation, that doesn't happen that way. Cities, counties, states. So please I don't know that we'll be here when mass transportation comes through Atlantic, or I don't know which roads that it would potentially go through. So what they are working with is better transportation for the people that don't have transportation. So they're looking at how can we improve the bus stations or number of buses or et cetera. That's what they're looking at as well, to meet those needs. But the more if everybody wants to keep their car, then you're going to be in traffic, or mass transportation has to work a certain way. With the apartment complex providing a better bus stop, it allows people to not put a car on the streets. They take the buses, the people that, some potentially that are going to live there, not everybody. But it does allow for having cars off the streets. And that is kind of what the county's looking at. How do we keep cars off the street? So I just didn't want you to think that mass transportation's coming here, I don't know.
Okay.
It's gonna be years and years.
Okay, if I
Yeah.
may I yield? Tony has some questions. Go ahead, Tony.
Antonio Spavento. Yeah, I've been coming to these meetings since 2003, when they were talking about the traffic-oriented corridor that was supposed to be the monstrosity built right at the intersection here. This kind of housing I find very unattractive. They,
Excuse me. This isn't a popularity contest. No clapping, please.
the last such instance, which was supposed to be a gateway to the city, rests at the opposite end of 441 up by Sample Road, where they built that gigantic housing unit 3 inches off the curb that I see from my backyard over a mile away from the project. I just happened to drive through Fort Lauderdale the other day, and there's one of these on every other corner now. So this is common. There's nothing attractive about it to me. They're all boxes with a couple of nice window treatments. When you say mixed use, are you not talking about this project, or did you refer to this as mixed use?
The whole corridor is a mix of uses, not this project,
It's
sir.
not this project. This is just a housing.
Yes, sir.
And that development or that building next door, the business, and you say that's closed, is that possibly one day going to get knocked down and turned into even more apartments?
All I can tell you is the land use and the zoning and that you saw since the early 2000s have all been put in place for things like that to happen within this corridor.
I've seen over $100,000 in campaign contributions from realtors to just one of our city commissioners, and it bothers me.
Mr.
When I-
Spavento, I would keep your comments directed to the application that's before you this evening.
If you let
I
me
know.
finish this sentence and let the chair run the meeting, that would be great. It bothers me when I see something built so closely to the road. I've been living here 50 years, 25 in Margate and 25 in Coral Springs. And I used to drive the dirt road down Lyons to go to high school in Coconut Creek. So I know where development goes. Every time I came home from leave, I've seen development. And saying that there will be more people and always more people is not necessarily true. Saying that there are more cars and will always be more cars is not necessarily true, as we see car sharing and computers and electric cars may change traffic altogether in the near future. So making those kinds of plans. But my biggest objection is it's an eyesore. As far as the design goes, to me, this is a hometown community. We're going to look like every other overdeveloped place where they're squeezing people in. I go to where I lived in New Jersey 50 years ago, and it's not as developed as it is here. And it's been around since 1640. We've only been around 100 years, and we've managed to squeeze every square inch of life out of our community. And putting a parking lot over green space next to a reserve is also not my idea of good city planning. Thank you.
Okay, do you all still want to hear from the traffic?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. My name's Carl Peterson. I'm a registered engineer here in the state of Florida. Been practicing more than 34 years now, all here in South Florida. My office is close by, 8400 North University Drive in Tamarack. I live in the area as well, so believe me, I understand the traffic. I deal with it all the time, not only on the work side, but on the personal side. So I understand the issues. Mr. Scott, as well as your city staff, have done a good job this evening of sharing their thoughts relative to traffic and the traffic analyses that we've done. I don't have a formal presentation, but I'll maybe just a little bit more color to what our traffic study involved. This traffic impact study has been in the making for about 2 years now. Just like the rest of the project, it's been very extensive, far more extensive than any other municipality that we work in South Florida in terms of the amount of review and the depth of the analysis. Matt mentioned that we've had reviews by your staff on multiple occasions. We've received comments, addressed those comments, And then, as Matt mentioned also, you hired an outside consultant who has also I think she has more years of experience than I do here in South Florida, at least very close. And she has reviewed the analysis as well and concluded that the analysis has been done appropriately and has reached the appropriate conclusions. I would add also that Florida DOT has reviewed our application from a traffic standpoint, as has Broward County, and they've approved it as well. So look, I understand traffic is a hot button issue. I deal with this every day, and we may agree to disagree. I have standards that I have to adhere to, standards of the profession, and that's what the report that we've prepared has been done in accordance with, those standards. And according to those standards, our impacts are minor. Will there be more traffic than what's there generated by this vacant parcel today? Absolutely. Vacant parcel generates no traffic. We're going to be adding 300 plus units. That will be more traffic. However, the number of trips may not be as much as you might think. The data that we rely upon is collected by a national organization. They do studies on these types of properties, as well as retail, office space, et cetera, to estimate the number of trips that will be generated. And Matt referenced it earlier in his presentation. This project will generate about 130 trips in the AM peak hour and about that many in the PM peak hour. So I know there's 300 and some units, but obviously not everybody's leaving and coming back at the same time. And so what I try to do with that is I try to give ourselves a frame of reference. What does that mean? 130 trips. That sounds like a lot of cars. But what that means is about 2 vehicles a minute. And so when you think about it in those terms, the impacts to the adjacent street network are fairly minor. And in the transportation world here in Broward County, as well as South Florida in general, we refer to it as a de minimis impact, which means basically, is there an impact? Yes. Is it measurable? Not really. And so those are the conclusions that we've had with this study. I would also add that the DOT is evaluating the State Road 7 corridor from a safety standpoint and looking at some operational and safety improvements. We've documented some of those in our report, and those will be forthcoming to make the corridor operate more smoothly and also more safely. So with that, I'm here to answer any questions that you might have. If you have any comments, I'll be happy to address.
Any questions? Go ahead.
Yes, I'm sorry, but I am just trying to figure out how do you come up with 150 or 130 AM trips when you have 330 homes? There's going to be at least 2 people in each home that have to go to work because mothers also go to work a lot. And then you have maybe the ones that have 3 bedrooms, you have teenagers that will also be driving. So I'm sorry, but my math doesn't come up with a number of 150. It is something that it just surprises me. And believe me, I saw another traffic report for another project here in Margate, and I had the same question. I just don't understand it.
Right. I understand. It seems somewhat counterintuitive. For me, I've been doing this 30 plus years. I've been involved in this trip generation estimations since its infancy back in the 80s. And what the transportation professionals do is they collect data at multiple sites all across the country, many of them obviously here in South Florida because we're a very dense populated area and ideal for collecting that type of data. And it's gotten even so refined now that we're able to determine trips based upon single family homes, low-rise multifamily homes, mid-rise, low-rise being say 1, 2, and 3 floors, mid-rise being 4 to 10 floors, and high-rise being greater than 10. And so what we find is that the lower the number of floors, the more trips, okay? I live in a single family home, kind of similar to what you referenced. I mean, I have a car, my wife has a car, my daughter, when she's home, she drives. We have a lot more trips. Whereas when I lived in an apartment earlier in my life, I wasn't married and I didn't drive very much. I went to and from work and that was it. But as you live in a single family home, you have kids, you have their activities, there's many things and comings and goings. As the number of floors goes up, there's less likelihood of children, there's more likelihood of younger professionals, they're working from home. That's what the data says. And so, and there's a very strong correlation with that data. And so we've referenced, I know I said early on, I have standards that I have to adhere to, and the standards that we're adhering to here are in accordance with the profession, and the estimation of the number of trips is in accordance with that. So I understand your concern, but we're applying the data. It's not just my opinion. Your staff has reviewed it. Your outside consultant has reviewed it. The DOT's reviewed it. County's reviewed it. I don't have much leeway there to say, oh, it should be higher, it should be lower. The numbers are what the numbers generate from the data.
Okay, board members, are there any more questions or can we move on? Okay.
Eugene Eckley. Yeah, I mean, I can understand the marginal increase in traffic of what this one development may indeed be slight.
Mhm.
But what concerns me is that mode of thinking ignores the collective impact of several developments in the city over a period of time. That if you take all these small marginal increases from individual developments and you were to add them up over a period of 5 or 10 years, you may come up with a much more significant number or increase in the amount of traffic in major arteries associated with the city, and move us in the direction of the need for more mass transportation. So what my fear is that we're facing a worsening situation over time. We're kind of fooling ourselves with this one project at a time mode of deliberation, making the traffic situation and other services less and less productive for us. And I don't know what, if any, different mode of activity or deliberation would be available to the city and its citizens to put the brakes on that.
I understand your comment. I don't think that's really a traffic question. I think it's more of a policy decision that obviously the city has to make, but your point's well taken.
If I might, your consideration tonight is on the application before you with respect to larger policy issues. That's something for the city staff, for city commission to address with respect to long-term solutions.
Okay, so if nothing more, we can open for public comment.
This is Matthew Scott. I just want to reserve Mr. Tulsa the opportunity to respond after public comment. Thank you.
Yes, I previously stated that. So right now, ladies and gentlemen, if you have been sworn in, now is your time to come to the podium and provide comment. This is not question and answer, but it's comment related to the project that's being presented this evening. If you come to the podium, state your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes. Thank you very much.
I've lived here all my life. I'm 47 right now. And just the amount of building and population that has come about, it's, I mean, isn't there a limit to how many people can be in a city? And another thing, who came up with the height of these buildings? Does that have anything to do with the approach to Fort Lauderdale Executive Airport? And I mean, we do have a choice. If we don't want this in our city and this influx of more people to a residential area, then we should have that choice. It would be a shame if this site is developed. I mean, that road, Southwest 7th Street and 441, that light's already a problem. And the traffic constantly, no matter what time of day it is, there's just constant traffic throughout the whole city, even into North Lauderdale, Coral Springs. I mean, wherever you go, there's just constant traffic, no matter what time of day, unless it's in the wee hours of the morning, you know, so. I would not like to see this project built in my neighborhood, so. Thank you for your time. Have a good night.
I don't approve this. This is chaotic. There's a lot of children in the area that get off on 7th and 64th, which is on the backside of the preserve. With this residential area, I believe more people speeding through this area. The kids are in danger. All the bus stops are at that intersection. I see there's crazy people going through, blowing the stop signs as it is. The intersection of 7th or Forest and 441, as the previous gentleman said, is poorly planned. The light system, I mean, when you backed up and you're waiting for it to turn green, there's a couple light cycles sometimes. And the turning lane is very short, and it takes a while to even just want to make a right-hand turn and head south on 441. So I would definitely say no to this plan if we have that choice, and I don't know, put it someplace else, or really just have better planning.
Wanted to just question a couple of things about this project. I like to be involved in my city's planning and some of the consequences that it can have to it. And we're all here because we want the city to be better as far as, you know, being residents of the city. I don't agree with the assessment of the traffic. That's off rip. I don't think the math adds up regardless of the data and where the data is coming from. We would need to see maybe a little bit more of that. There's no way that people that can afford that place, they only have half of the cars. So you're buying 338 apartments and you're telling me that there's only 338 cars. I just don't see that. It's going to be more than that, more people driving across the whole time. The traffic is the biggest concern for us. I've been here multiple times, and I can tell you that the traffic is probably one of the biggest concerns because it's gotten worse and worse and worse since I've moved to Margate and bought a house here. We want the area to be really nice, and also I can understand from a perspective of an investor, it's a really good opportunity. But I also agree with some of your assessments that it's not being looked at for the collective good of the environment and the citizens and the residents around it. Me personally, I object to this particular project just because a few things is the traffic I don't like, the building is an eyesore, and the benefits that they're stating, it may be good as far as investment benefits, but that's not for the people who live there. We're not going to gain from that. To us, anybody who's seen previously any high-rise or mid-rise that have went up, what had happened to the actual properties around it based on research? What did the people do? They left. We don't want to leave. We want to stay here. We want to raise our kids here. When people come, they're not buying from Margate. People coming from outside buying these apartments. People from Margate probably can't even afford those apartments that are going to go up. And I've seen that, me personally, with a couple of people that did that with Lennar and a couple of other projects. It worked out great, but it's possible. Just move it somewhere else. Take it by where they make the fair down there. That's great. There's multiple apartments. Build it down there. We don't object. We already have a lot going on 441. We don't want to add to it. I object. Thank you very much.
Live right off of 8th Court, where this place is going to be put directly across the street. When the man said that the more buildings, the less cars, I come from a city where we had nothing but high rise, meaning I come from New York. And everybody in those buildings who had a car used it. I have been here 40 years now in Florida. I have not yet been on a bus because once I got a car, I didn't need to ride a bus. My son rode the bus back and forth to school, but the moment I got him a car, he's never been on a bus again. So to say that people will leave their cars at home and take the bus, not true. I tried to get together a bus ride for people here, and you know what I was told? Why should I get on a bus when I got a car? Is what everyone told me. You're talking about putting this building across from us. They're giving you their perspective and what they say, what works for them as far as how things are going to work and how things are going to be beneficial. But they're not thinking about us. I bought my house here 24 years ago. I have forgot a few times to lock my door. I've had no problems. But when you put that housing complex across the street, I'm telling you, I'm gonna have to make sure my door's locked. I've been in law enforcement for 33 years, and I worked in a jail. And half them people in there are because they're breaking in projects. When I look on my ring, I see where people are breaking in people's apartments. I see where people are stealing people's packages from their doors. I see all of this. And being in law enforcement, I pay more attention to a lot going on. You talking about it's not going to be more traffic? Yes, it is. And for them to tell you that it's not, that's not true. That is not true. So you put this building in an area where they have homes, you're going to bring down the value of those homes. And that's not fair to us, especially when we've been dedicated and we've stayed in this city because we like it here. Like I said at one of your other meetings, where I live off of 8th Court, it's a well-kept, hot secret gem because I have no problems back there. But when you put this apartment, excuse me? No, I'm not saying it's
Please,
not.
ma'am,
Mar-
make your comments to
I'm
the.
not saying
board.
Margate is not a gym because that's why I'm still here 24 years later. But when you put housing complexes across from homes, you have a problem. You have a bad problem. Look at 19th Street and 31st Avenue. They eventually had to put a metal fence with spikes on the top. You know why? Because when people stopped at that corner, those people was coming out of there robbing the people that was sitting there waiting on the light, and then running back up in them apartments and
10
you couldn't
seconds.
find them. Yeah, okay, I'll be finished. But in the meantime, it's not fair to us. I mean, I understand they want to build something, and I understand you want to make more money in the city. I have no issue with that. But think about the people who live here.
Ma'am, thank you for your comment.
And I've lived here in Margate 21 years. And when I just moved here, you could go out any day of the week, especially on a Sunday, and you're able to come out and get in with ease. Now, as it is, without this building here, which is bringing in 328 residents, which they're going to be adding cars. It is Sunday. My husband was like, it's time to move. This is ridiculous. The city is getting too crowded. We have the Serrano Park, or whatever, how it's pronounced. There's not even enough parking space in that park. And we're now going to add a building across the street that they're going to be wanting to come to the park. Where are they going to park? It is absolutely ridiculous. Even if you look at the plan, I saw your plan. For 328 residents, there's not enough space for parking in the way the building is going to be. So where are they going to park? We've had to call Margate police because tractor trailers used to be parking in the space beside us. We have people loitering at night, and now we're adding an additional building with 328 more people coming to the. It's not fair. It's not fair for the people who love the city, who love their homes, who want to stay here, to have to deal with so much more traffic, so much more people, lack of parking. It's truly not taking into consideration your residents and the people who are here paying our taxes and doing what we're supposed to do. So I am begging you guys, really think hard. I love all of what y'all had to say, but think hard about it, because as it is right now, we are already suffering. Adding additional is not gonna. And my husband works for Broward Transit. He drives the bus. It is insane. And I can't even tell you the hours he comes home. 2:00 in the morning if he has to do the 19. That bus runs all the way till either 1 or 2 a.m. How much more can they do? And these are the employees, bus drivers, they don't even get paid a lot of money. He works for the transit and they're driving the 19 back to back, so many different shifts to get people in and out. And it's always very busy. How much more? Sometimes there's not even enough space on the bus. They have to get another bus. So the moral of the story is we already have enough on 441. 441 is a busy street. Let's be for real. Adding that complex, I'm sorry, it's not a good fit for Margate. And if they didn't do it up north, because they declined it further north of 441, why you always want to put the dump down here? First we had Popeyes,
10
and then
seconds,
now we
please.
have this.
Excuse
It
me,
is
shh,
ridiculous.
quiet,
It
please.
is absolutely ridiculous that we have to always contend. Always the worst things gets placed south of 441.
Ma'am, thank you for your
You're welcome.
comment.
Again, I live in the neighborhood across the street from your complex. The city commission has already turned down and been 10 years in dispute over doing a complex like this on Margate Boulevard. So again, like Tamara said, why are we pushing it down to the south end of Margate? Why are we always the ones? What about the kids? There's going to be 338 apartments. Don't tell me that there's going to be single people in those apartments. They're going to be families. Now you got kids that are going to be encroaching the schools. Our schools are already overcrowded. Like all of this stuff needs to be considered, not just the traffic, which we know that that's not a factual. You have 2 cars minimum. You had to make them 750 parking spaces. You plan on 750 cars. So, don't tell me there's only going to be 150 cars coming and going at hours of the day. Everyone works to afford rent. Everyone, both parents work. And I think you guys need to reconsider the zoning that you're thinking of putting there. Zone it for what it was for, which was the offices. Thank you.
I've been a resident for over 50 years, and I do not agree with this project. First of all, I would like to know, does this project reside with how we vote, the residents, tonight?
This is for public comment, not a question and answer session. If you have testimony to provide to the board, they'll consider it. Thank
I
you.
want to know if the residents' vote is going to count on whether this proceeds or not.
And the board will make the decision tonight, but this is not question and answer session. Thank you.
All right, I still have time. How much a unit are these apartments? How much is it going to cost a unit?
Ma'am, I'm sure you can get the information from planning staff, but it's not a question and
Right,
answer
you
session.
said we could come up and ask
Provide comment.
Okay. I want to know if this land is zoned for low-income housing, affordable housing, well, or under the administrative projects connected to Biden-Harris and their interjection into the housing, into rural communities. Is it connected with that? Okay.
Once
all
again,
right.
this is just for comment, not question and answer.
All
Thank
right.
you.
I also say that this project will lower our property values. I also do not like the traffic situation. It's not good. I think we should have this land. We should preserve our land here in Margate. This is a beautiful, beautiful place. Believe me, 50 years of living here, I could have gone anywhere else in these 50 years. I love Margate. And I think we should make the land more valuable instead of bringing it down. Thank you very much.
Okay, we're now going to close public comment. Oh,
Our concern is with the folks behind us in Oakland Hills, which is 528 homes, we're about 100. Everybody comes out 7th Court, 7th Street, 11th Street, and we get about 10 seconds to make a left turn. I counted 10 seconds on both streets. So there's always a traffic jam. And I'm not a traffic engineer, but I printed out some statistics from the FDOT. And there are thousands of cars. At 5 o'clock, there's about 1,900 cars go by there. And almost, and this is from 2023, they don't have 2024. And it looks like to me about, and correct me if I'm wrong, 42,000 a day on 441 from Coconut Creek Parkway down to Kimberly Boulevard. So that's a lot of cars. And everybody, and there's only 2 outlets here. Is that what I saw up here? 2 outlets to get out of that project? 2 outlets, one to 7th Street, one to 441. The folks coming out are going to make a right. If they want to go north on 441, they got to come down to 8th Court, make a U-turn, and go back north. That'll really be backed up. It's backed up now. It's tough to make a turn. In the opposite direction, coming north, folks that live in the townhomes just on the other side of where the car dealership used to be, they make U-turns also. So everybody's making U-turns at that corner. And that's one of our ways of getting in and out of that area is 8th Court and 11th Street. Those are the only 2. If you go up to 6th, you can only make a right turn. And the light at 7th is very short also. So 338 homes or units, even if they have 1 car apiece, still 338 cars you're going to dump out there in the morning and the evening. Plus all the other stuff going back and forth. So all I can say is we'd like to really consider this hard. I don't know if we need it. One other question that I can't answer question, right? I only can comment. But if there's an office complex, there's a lot of parking spaces in there too. So if they start
10
renting that,
seconds.
excuse me? 10 seconds. There's a lot of parking spaces there. That combined with the parking spaces that they want to propose to us is almost double. There's hundreds of parking spaces for that office complex. And what if they rent that out? Now you've got even more cars.
Sir,
coming
thank
out.
you for your comment. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
Any more public comments?
I don't. Just wait.
And this development to me particularly, and I side with all of the other residents here that have concerns about the traffic traveling south on 441. For me to get to my house, I have to make a U-turn. And I have to wait for the Southwest 7th light to sometimes go red, but then I have to take into consideration the people coming from 6th Street. So making that U-turn, I've lived in Monte Carlo for now 14 years, and I've seen at least 5 deadly fatal accidents because of that. I implore the board, please consider this community development, which yes, could be an addition to our community in terms of finances, but is it really worth it? Thank you.
I was not going to get up and speak, but I just couldn't sit and not say anything. And so I live in a senior community, and it was originally built for, I would say, a couple, maybe kid or 2. It's 55 and older. However, what we've been seeing is an increase in the kids moving back in with the parents. So that is not something that anybody has brought up here. The gentleman that was talking about the traffic study was saying, well, the kids will grow up, whatever. What we're seeing is the kids are coming back. And so that definitely is going to be an increase in the traffic. We see it in the community. We have single driveways, and now they're building double driveways, and they're coming back. So
I think what was used as the gauge for the traffic, I think it's a little inaccurate because it's not the reality.
The development of this building is way too big. Developer doesn't really care about us. If the developer develops something, it's all residential. Margate's residential. The building is way too big. He's saying it doesn't overlook, but it does overlook. He's not taking into taxes. That's going to be for him. He doesn't care about that. He doesn't care about the taxes. He doesn't care about the roads that have to be built. You can't depend on mass transportation in order to take care of all the cars. You have to build roads in order for the mass transportation to work. Plus, the taxes are going to go up. Mass transportation is not cheap. I know it's fairly funded, but it's going to be a lot more taxes. You need more fire, you need more police, you need everything. You need more of everything in order. You should just be the offices and that's it. It shouldn't be residential for 338 people. Plus, you have to build up the waste and sewerage. Where's all that going to go? So, developer don't care. He doesn't care about Margate. You can look at Miami, the way Miami's overbuilt. They're still trying to build roads to get everyone out of there. It's going to take more than 10 years, over 10 years. If you let them in, everybody else is going to come in. Well, that's all I'm saying.
I have your statistics as far as transportation goes from the Department of Transportation website. And this is from also 2023, by the way. At 5 o'clock in the afternoon on any given day from Coconut Creek Parkway to Atlantic Boulevard and further down, there's 1,928 cars that go by there within 1 hour. Okay? This is also statistics from.
Sir, please direct your comments to the board if you could. Thank you.
Suppose I want to talk to them also. Anyway, from Coconut Creek Parkway down, also in 2023, there was an average of 25,000 going in the south direction, 25,000 cars, and 26,000 cars daily. That's going in north and south directions. Also from the Department of Transportation, from Atlantic Boulevard on 441, 42,500 cars are going daily. 42,500 cars daily. And now they want to add supposedly 135 cars. That's a bunch of baloney. They have now, with that number, with everybody having at least 2 cars, that's going to be over 700 more cars. If you add the 700 cars onto the 1,900 cars, that's almost a 45% increase that we're going to be having in traffic over there. Thank you very much.
Public comment is now closed. Mr. Scott, you said you wanted to make some remarks?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Again, Matthew Scott here on behalf of the applicant. I just want to take a quick moment to respond to some of the comments from the community that took time out of their life to come. And then just a couple closing remarks. So I heard a comment about school capacity, and in the interest of time, I was trying to make my presentation a little more brief. So as part of our application, we have to go to the school board. We have to ask them to analyze the impact of our project on the schools. And so as part of our application that is in the backup that all of you can get copies of, the school board said that there is more than enough capacity in the schools for this project. If the school board did not say that, if there were not capacity, we would have to provide a certain amount of money to the school district to accommodate the schools. And so there's not an issue there. The school board analyzes that. We don't get to say. Second thing is parking. There was a concern about parking. I get that there's an issue in a lot of the older communities in Margate with parking. The city has a code requirement. The city has a law of what the required parking is. We exceed that required amount. When we get to traffic, traffic obviously was the biggest issue. I get that traffic's a major concern. What our traffic engineer spoke about is how there is data collection for these things. And what that means is that experts in this field go to similar multifamily communities and they sit there with a counter and they count the cars every single minute across tons of projects and then establish averages. And so it's really common, I go to a lot of cities, I do this for a living, and I hear this a lot, that we must be lying. We must be making all of this up, right? And so that's why there is this published data. There are manuals and research that support this. But more importantly, You do not have to take our word for it. Fine if you think we're a bunch of liars and Carl and I are making this up. That's why the city engineering department reviews this, and that's why the city hired an independent traffic engineer to review our traffic study. That's not our friend. That's the person that tests our study and then ultimately approved it. And so this is a common thing. Oh, these numbers don't make sense. I can't possibly believe that. That's why the city hires independent consultants to review these things. With regard to zoning, there seemed to be some confusion. We are not asking to change the zoning of this property. The city, your elected officials, decided that this property is a spot for multifamily development. They decided that there is an invitation to the development community to develop mixed-use development, intensive development, heavy active commercial uses, and multifamily. We are here applying for a use type that is permitted under the city zoning code. And so it's really important that we understand that. With regard to taxes, there was a comment that this is going to lead to taxes being increased. It's actually the opposite. Cities typically are supportive of development because it increases the city's tax base, because there's the homestead exemption for existing homeowners and they don't pay increased taxes. So a project like this is estimated to add $2 million to the city of Margate's tax base. And so I wanted to correct some of that commentary that's just incorrect. And so that sort of leads me to my closing comment. We're here tonight, as the city attorney informed you at the beginning, for what is called a quasi-judicial hearing. It's a quirky term. You might not be familiar with it. What it means is we're not here for a popularity contest. We're not here hoping you don't think the project is an eyesore. The Planning and Zoning Board is sitting tonight as judges under the law to review the evidence and testimony presented, to review the staff report and the supporting materials. What happens sometimes in these projects is the community comes out, very frequently, says they hate it. They say, I'm against this. My vote's no, and everyone cheers. And the courts that have reviewed this have said, these hearings are not popularity contests. These are not governance by applause meter. The question isn't how much was I interrupted or whether people snapped for me. It was troubling to hear a board member's comment say, this is an eyesore to me. Even if you hate the project, if it meets code, your obligation under the law is to recommend approval. And so the evidence before you tonight from your staff and from our materials suggests we meet code in all material respects. There is not an item that the experts have said we don't meet code for. And so that being said, we would respectfully request a recommendation of approval of our 3 applications. As I said, even if you think you don't like the project here, the question isn't whether you like it or not, the question is whether it meets code. And so thank you for allowing me to just provide that response, and thank you for allowing me this time tonight. We think this project will be a great contribution to the city and is something that has been sorely needed in the city, and particularly in this area. So thank you very much.
Excuse me, miss. No, you don't shout from the audience, please. Thank you. If I might, Madam Chair? Right. David Tulsis, City Attorney. So let me direct the board individually and as a whole that your decision at the conclusion of the hearing must be based on competent substantial evidence related to the city's code and not generalized support or opposition that is not fact-based. The record must contain substantial competent evidence to sustain a decision on appeal. Substantial competent evidence is such evidence, as opposed to opinion or speculation, as will establish substantial basis of fact from which the facts at issue can reasonably be inferred. It is such relevant evidence as a reasonable mind would accept as adequate to support a conclusion. So, Madam Chair, at this point in time, unless you request any other testimony, you can move forward.
Go ahead.
Antonio Spavento again. I just saw one thing that wasn't covered. I'd like to bring up this map of the project, this realistic photograph, or whatever it is, call this.
The aerial view of the property.
The aerial view,
I think it was third slide.
it's in the 1, 2, 3, 4th slide, 5th slide, page 5, site plan. That's 2, go to 5, 3, 4, 5. Yes. That little, and I don't know who in the city would be answering these questions. I'd like to ask how people go south on 441 from this location. From the entire place, how does somebody go south on 441? Could you just point
Yes,
at where it
Christopher
is?
Gratz here. I'm going to point for you.
And Chris, why don't you state it for the record? Be helpful.
Record, over here on the boundary
Right.
property, State Road 7.
Right.
Turn here, go
Mhm.
south this way.
No, that's north, isn't it?
No, that's
Hold on.
South is oriented north. So then you come out, you make a right out.
Okay.
It'll be a right out.
I'm sorry then. How do you get out north?
North, north, you go through the project and you go up through here to.
Everybody.
Please, ladies and gentlemen, please let Mr. Gratz explain and answer the question.
When you enter the project, you travel through the parking lot, go through the office complex, through the existing connection up to Southwest 7th Street, and then go to Southwest 7th and and you wait at the light to take the left to go north. You will probably find when you live here, you will not make the right out to do the U-turn. You will find that the traffic movement will be better to go up Southwest 7th with the light to go northbound.
So everybody in the community that's out of the picture there. Okay, let's skip that. What happens when you go to develop that building project and rip it all down for construction? How do people get out then?
I don't understand the
The
question.
office buildings are closed, correct?
Okay,
What happens when that's redeveloped? All these people are gonna cut through the customers and go through the parking lot. Everybody has to go out to a street that's not built for this to go out to a traffic light.
the traffic, whatever is here, that's the entrance and that's the exit. The traffic pattern will be unchanged, whatever is built here.
And looking at this map, where would kids,
Excuse me, we can't have people yelling from the audience. The board needs to be able to ask their questions and hear their answers. I apologize if I'm being abrupt, but thank you.
can you show me anywhere kids could play?
Relative to the project,
Yes. That's not paved.
there's an open space feature at the entrance. There's a pool with a whole lot of area around that. And then between these two buildings is a whole linear park between the buildings. And it's all, it's what you saw in the renderings. That's where they would be able to play. And then also anyone who would be able to go to the park.
And those people at the front, closest to State Road 7, I only see like 20 parking spots for that entire building next to the building. There's nothing on State Road 7. There's nothing north of it. There's nothing south of it. So you've only got like 20 parking spots near the building for that entire first building.
As we've gone over, the project actually exceeds the code requirement for the number of parking spaces. The distance that people have to walk to their space isn't really relevant in the project. It complies.
Because again, I'm looking at this as a longtime resident. I know they built a place at Toscana, which is across the street from where Penn Dutch used to be, north of this in the city. And those people, I raised these questions at the Planning and Zoning Committee before it was built. They basically built a ghetto where people have no place to play. The place has been there for years. It's constantly being rented out as if it just opened yesterday because nobody stays there. It's just doesn't seem like a wise development for people to live. For people to get up and go to work as if that's all life is, okay, but there's nowhere for a kid to play Frisbee. In that little narrow thing between the buildings, I saw the picture you had, you can't even throw a ball there. You're building a ghetto for children here, in my opinion. I'm not doing it for applause, folks, and honestly, I say what I say because I think it. I'm not looking for any attention whatsoever. Okay, so don't encourage them. And I'm going to answer a question real quick. The commission can override this board. It doesn't matter how we vote. If they want to say yes, they can say yes. that empty business plaza, do they intend to redevelop it? Do you know?
I have no idea their intentions. They're entitled to do whatever the land use and zoning code allows.
I spent a lot of time in abandoned buildings as a kid. I consider them an attractive nuisance. So I'd like to see it ripped down if it's not being used. That's all. I just wanted to know how you expect people to get in and out of this place. Thank you.
All right, someone make a motion to approve 2024-310, consideration of a special exemption for the Forest Apartments.
I make a motion to approve 20.
It's based upon staff report.
Yes, based on the staff report.
All right.
Okay. And I second,
No,
so.
you can't.
Oh, I can say, okay.
Unless you pass the gavel. So you
I
can-
second.
Okay.
So motion was made by Ms. Sanchez, seconded by Mr. Suleiman.
All right. So
All right.
then,
You
all
have-
in favor?
You have a motion and a second, yes.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed?
No.
So that motion passes 4-1. So now you got item B.
Okay, moving on to item B, consideration of a plat note amendment for the Forest Apartments. Someone make a motion to pass
Which
the
one? Sorry.
B ID 2024-311.
That's the plat note amendment.
Would anyone like to make a motion?
I'm sorry, I'm looking for this. Okay, I make a motion to approve BID 2024-311 as recommended by staff.
Someone second?
I second.
Okay.
So that's a motion by Ms. Sanchez, seconded by Mr. Eckley.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed?
No.
Okay, motion passes 4-1.
Now we're moving on to ID 2024-312, consideration of a subdivision resurvey for the Forest Apartments. Someone make a motion to approve?
I make a motion to approve.
Someone second?
I second.
Okay, all in, go ahead.
A motion by Mr. Eckley, seconded by Ms. Sanchez.
All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed?
No.
All right, the motion passes 4-1. These recommendations will be forwarded to the city commission for their consideration.